Right, I'm very jealous because, yeah, Viltrox has just made a monster lens for my Nikon Z cameras and not Micro Four Third. This is the brand new Viltrox 135mm f1.8 lab. It is a beast. Hi, it's Cheng here from RED35, and today we are going to look at this. This is perhaps one of the best portrait lenses you can get on the market right now, the Viltrox 135 1.8. And why would I say the best? Right, okay, for those portrait photographers out there, if you're shooting long enough, you probably will agree with me that 135mm focal length is perhaps the best focal length you can choose for your portrait work. Not 85, not 50, not 180 or 200, but 135 is bang in the middle. I love this sort of focal length because not only you can get like really shallow depth of field if you're really interested in that look, but also the compression. I love the compression ratio on 135mm lens. 200 perhaps it's just a little bit too much. 85 it's just not enough. So 135 it just struck the right balance for that kind of immense look for your portrait work. First, let's talk about the build quality of the 135 f1.8 from Viltrox. While many lens makers these days are going through cost-saving exercises, giving us brown cardboard boxes and really cheap pouches, well, Viltrox has done the complete opposite. Very substantial packaging. The box, it just looks like $1 million thing. And also the internal, if you look at the lens hood, the accessory that is provided, oh my God, I haven't seen this sort of thing unless you spend 5-6K on lens. It's the rubber ring around the lens hood. And this means that you can actually put the lens on the ground very securely without having to slide around, and also provide a little bit of protection from scratches as well. So this is a very good touch. So well done, Viltrox. But what impresses me though is the actual build quality of the lens. Very substantial, a bit heavy, I have to say that, but this is a 135 1.8. And also it's just full metal housing, very thick, very good. The focusing is smooth and lots of buttons here. It has a focus limiter, AM, FM switch together with a click and declick feature for the aperture ring itself. Oh, but also, like I said, this is the high-end lens. It has full weather sealing, rubber gasket, and also internally as well. So you can use this lens, in the rain if you really want to. So this, my God, I think is really good. But there is one thing that I would like to highlight to you when it comes to, build quality, because when I first hold this lens, I did hear something. I will see if you can hear it. Can you hear that? Well, that's the lens element inside rocking about. Well, I have seen these sort of lenses before, and it is part of the floating element designs. It's personally not my favorite because you will hear it rocking around even when you're holding it, turning upside down, it just moves around. It almost feels like something is gone loose. So I'm not feeling that confident about this type of design, but it is a design nonetheless. And when I turn it on, the rocking simply subsides. I think when the lens is powered on, the magnets start to hold the things in place and everything works perfectly once again. So this is actually by design, not a fault itself. But like I said, I'm just never a fan of floating elements designs. And second thing is about handling. Right, okay. The handling, however, is another thing. This is, like I said, a rather substantial and heavy lens, even on a full-frame body. I tried it on my ZF. I don't have a Z8 or Z9, but I believe this would definitely hold a lot better with bigger and heavier body, so you can balance it out a little bit. But by doing so, you're adding the overall weight of the whole lens and setup. But for me, these sort of lenses are used in sort of very specific situations. Anyway, you're not going to use it like continuously for the entire day, for instance. It's only going to be for that specific 1 or 2 hour actions there. So that is okay. And even on my ZF with the optional grip attached, I have no problem operating this lens for all my portrait shoots, for instance. And I have done quite a bit already with this lens, and I am very happy about the handling side of it. So now let's talk a little bit about the image quality, right? I said this lens is a third of the price of the Sony version, so is it as good? Well, I would say this is by far the best Viltrox lenses I've tested. And also when it comes to optical quality, well, seriously, this is on another level. It is the best Chinese lens I have seen so far. Full stop, period. So Viltrox has done a good job in designing this lens and also achieving such a feast for any photographers. Especially when I do portrait works, I really need to see all the details from the clothing, for instance. May not be so good for the skin, for those who may have a bad skin day, for instance, but that can be tidied up in post. But having the ability to resolve such amount of detail is simply stunning. If you don't believe me, have some of the work that I've done recently. As you can see, the lens is really, really great. As a portrait photographer, I cannot ask for more when it comes to the amount of detail that this lens can resolve, and also giving me such a character that is not too clinical, which is something I much prefer. Some of the modern lenses nowadays are super clinical, but in terms of the overall blend between being organic yet very modern and sharp, the Viltrox Lab is really something else. So I really enjoy that. So in terms of sharpness, central is already phenomenal. Edges is a little bit behind the central regions, but you really can't notice it unless you go into micro details and really pinch in and look at the pixel level sharpness. Overall, I would say the 1.8 is totally usable entirely across the frame, but when you stop down, you do increase the contrast level, and also the edge sharpness will continue to improve a little bit. I would say the peak performance arrives around about 5.6 and 6.3, and nothing else I could see that can be improved further. The fraction does come in though around about 11. One more thing that surprised me is that the Viltrox 135-1.8 Lab hasn't got any kind of aberrations. Low curve, nothing. I can't see purple fringing even shooting directly into the sun. There is no distortion to speak of. I can't see any distortions. And flare is just, I point this thing right into the sun and I could barely see any. I just don't know how they can achieve the lens to this quality at such a price. It's really special, this lens, right? I'm over the moon. You can see my excitement here. It's not that I'm testing the lens and trying to say anything good about Viltrox, but I am genuinely impressed with what they have achieved with the lab lens right here. One thing that I do notice is there are a little bit of vignetting at 1.8, between 1.8 and f2, but it will soon disappear by 2.8. And another feast as well, because being a 135 f1.8, a lot of the time you will see that there's always heavy vignetting around, where especially you're shooting wide open f1.8 or f2, for instance. But this lens really opens up a lot of opportunity if you want to do some creative work. Amazing. Next, I want to talk about the autofocus of the lens. Well, this is a substantial piece with substantial and huge elements, as you can see right here. And they are pretty heavy as well, which means that it requires a rather powerful and accurate focusing motor. Viltrox told me that they use VZM motor, which is one of the best and fastest on the market right now. But even so, it still struggles to move those elements in and out to acquire focus. Normally, it's fine if you're shooting still subject, it acquires focusing really quickly and snappy. But if you want to engage, let's say subject tracking, for instance, doing some continuous focusing work, well, this is when you're starting to see it struggles. In normal walking pace, what I found is totally fine, but anything faster than walking, it starts to struggle to keep pace. And a lot of the time when I'm trying to track a kid walking or running towards me in full speed, I find that I always miss a couple of frames here and there, because I can see that the lens, it really struggles to move the lens element to keep track of it. So that is one downside of this lens. It's not a sports lens, but totally fine with anything else. Finally, I want to touch base on the video side of this lens, because we're talking about autofocus, because in most instances, you may want to use this lens for a little bit of video work because of the character that it has for such cinematic results. So video is okay, of course, it's a lens, it does the job, but I would say two things about this lens. First of all, it has heavy breathing. So when you rack focus, you will see it. You may have to do a little bit of work in post, but overall, it is not a very well corrected when it comes to focus breathing. And secondly, the focusing ring is an infinity one, so it doesn't have any hard stops, making acquiring focus manually a little bit of a tricky thing. And also not very accurate at all because you can't mark where you want to stop or start. So when it comes to racking focus, this is going to be a tricky thing for you. So overall, I would say that you can use it for casual video work, certainly not something serious. So this is my review on Viltrox latest 135 f1.8 lab for Nikon cameras. What do I think of it? Well, I think this lens is simply phenomenal. It's highly recommended if you're a portrait photographer or interested in shooting portrait photography and even some close-up landscape work, because this lens is simply one of the best out there for the price especially. And the build quality is excellent. It's just a very, very high-end lens. I would totally recommend. Overall, I just can't really fault it, full stop. So that's it, really. But having said that, Viltrox is going to continue to produce more lab series lens, and by that definition, lab is the highest tier when it comes to lens production because they have the Air series, they have the Pro series, and the lab series means that this is the highest tier of their production lineup. And I've spoken to Viltrox at the photography show, and they also showed me one of the upcoming lens, the 35mm f1.2 lab as well. And I will be very keen to test that lens once it arrives for the Nikon Z cameras. It's going to be released for the Sony E mount first and later with Z camera afterward. So this is going to be exciting news, and I'm really hoping to see more lab lenses from Viltrox because, you know, if they continue to do something like this, well, the future is definitely very bright for them. Literally. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and let me know your thoughts about the Viltrox lab lens. Would you like to see more of these lenses from them? And certainly what you think about Chinese lens making in general, because I am very curious about their future at the moment, because very exciting to see all the new products coming out from China, and some of them are really matching, if not surpassing, some of the Japanese offering. Really interesting time for them. Anyway, thank you very much, and you know what to do now. Thumb if you like this video, and sub if you want to stay in touch with all things photography and filmmaking. Until next time, bye now. Peace out.